I moved to New York City in the summer of 1989 to pursue the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. I got a sublet in the East Village on East 12th Street with a college friend. She had the bedroom and I had the living room pull-out couch. The second day in New York City, I was in my apartment setting up my stereo and connecting my turntable and my stereo, and I heard loud noises coming from the apartment next door. I had no idea what was going on. I was new in town. I didn't bother to ask. On my third day in New York City, I was hanging up my Tom Petty Full Moon Fever poster while listening to Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever, and I heard what sounded like pit bulls fighting to the death coming from the apartment next door. I had no idea what was going on in the apartment next door. On my third day in town, I was connecting my TV to my VCR, and it sounded like a couple of guys wrestling and throwing each other up against the wall in the apartment next door. That day when my roommate came home from work, I said to her, I said, "Hey, do you know who these guys are next door? I'm hearing a lot of noise." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I asked the guy we're subletting from, and according to him, there are a couple of gay men in a relationship who get drunk and they like to fight." I said, "Okay, well that's good to know. Do you know what these guys look like?" And she said, "I don't, but I've been told they're big and gay." My first week in New York City was spent drinking beer, going to bars, smoking pot, catching local rock and roll bands. I remember seeing the Lunatics, the Waldos, Johnny Thunders my first week in New York City, and ending the night at San Loco. Now sometimes I would leave my apartment, I would walk south, sometimes I would walk north. One night I decided I would walk west, so I went to the West Village to see what was going on in the West Village. Once I got to the West Village, I walked a little further, and I was over by the water on the west side. Now, I'm new in town. I'm 24 years old. I don't know much. I'm over by the water on the west side, past the West Village, and some older, good-looking, light-skinned black guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" I said, "I'm pretty good." And he said, "You going out tonight?" I said, "I'm out." And he said, he's like, "Yo, man, I got some sweet dick." And I said, I'm good, man, I'm good. And I scurried home to my East Village apartment. I didn't know anything. I didn't know there was male prostitutes in New York City. I was new in town, and I was only 24, fresh out of college. So, after 7 nights of going out and drinking beer and smoking pot and hearing loud music and blowing my ears out and eating in San Loco, I decided I would stay home one night and have a night off from the partying. So I'm like, I'm going to stay in, I'm going to watch TV, my roommate's gone, I'm just going to chill out tonight. It's 11 o'clock, I've got the Honeymooners on. I'm laying on my pull-out sofa bed couch and I'm watching the Honeymooners. And all of a sudden, I look out of my fire escape and there's a figure on the fire escape. And it's a white guy in his mid-30s, kind of well-built, bald, head, handlebar mustache, wife-beater shirt, denim, short shorts, Timberland boots, and white socks. And he's out there with a Budweiser, and he's intoxicated. And I see him out there, and I'm like, "Oh, well, that must be my neighbor. Who else has access to the fire escape?" And this guy sits down on the steps on the fire escape, and he's drinking his beer, and he's holding his head with one hand. I think nothing of it. I'm like, "Oh, it's summer. There's my neighbor." I'm watching the Honeymooners. The credits roll for the Honeymooners. And I look out the window. Now keep in mind the window's open and there's no screen in the window. I look out onto my fire escape, and suddenly my big gay neighbor begins to take his shirt off. After he takes his shirt off, he unbuckles his pants and takes his pants off. Of course, he has no underwear on. The man crouches down in my window, and he starts to play with his limp penis, and he begins to get his limp penis hard. All he's got on is his brown Timberlands and his white socks. He's crouched down in my window, and he's staring at me. I get up off the bed, and I go over to him, not too close. I go, "Excuse me, is there something I can help you with?" No. And he's like, "Yeah, I want to get fucked." I picked up my wallet, I got my house keys, I ran towards the door. And I said, "I'm new in town, I love this city, I'm not going to be bullied by my neighbor." I go back into the apartment with my wallet, my house keys, and I said, "Please get out of my window." By this time the man's got a full erection and he's masturbating in my window, he's crouched down, he's just staring at me. And I said, "Please get out of my window." And he mumbled something, he inched back, and as soon as he inched back I pulled the window down. I locked it, I pulled the shades down, and my heart was racing. I'm like, I need a drink. I left the apartment, I went over to the International Bar on First Avenue, and I had a cheap beer. I moved to New York to pursue the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle, and in my first week, I almost had it all.
Yeah! That's great.